My name's Piero Draculea. We are going to be inking a couple, maybe 3 pages, hopefully 3 pages from my graphic novel Ricky B Goes to Sea, featuring Ricky B the Rock and Roll Rat. And that's my streaming schedule if anyone's new here or whatever. So, this is where we left off last time. And, oh, yeah, fun. I don't know if it picks up on camera, but you can tell these are two different types of Bristol board. Anyways, so we had Ricky's cousin Darren. Ricky has shown him the plans for the submarine Darren wants to build, and or rather, that Ricky wants to build. He wants to have Darren build it because Ricky doesn't know. So, anyways, we've got this. This is where we left off, and where we're starting today is the conclusion of Darren and Ricky's conversation. After that, we'll get into the big Mike, Mrs. Mike fight, as described in the video title. So I'm using India ink. I've got it in a shot glass here, and I'm using a dip pen, and we are gonna run along with this. I do need to keep last week's visible because I got to have reference on what Darren's tattoos are. Um, so, and I'm not too worried if anybody hasn't seen previous videos where I talk about this. I do go really close to the line. That's because the way I'm going to do my page setup, it's going to have a black box basically about 1/2 inch thick bordering all around. So therefore, I don't have to worry too much about um, getting close to the line like I would if this was like a full bleed kind of a situation um, without that kind of a black box. So, but Darren's got his. He couldn't make up his. I think I said last time he couldn't make up his mind between having a mullet and having a rockabilly pompadour, so he decided to do both. So, gonna do that. Nice thing, of course, is with Darren being blonde, I don't have to color in his hair, so that's kind of a time saver. If I'd thought about that, I'd have a lot more blonde characters, but oh well. Okay, I gotta remember. So he's actually got 5 earrings in this year because he's got the hoop and then he's got 4. Um, and you'll notice the blue underdrawing, I'm not gonna don't worry about it being a little inaccurate for the final lines because that is a non-photo blue underdrawing. So I will be scanning this book in black and white, which means that the underdrawing goes away in that process. Have to be careful with this particular shot glass that I have my ink in. It's a little bit top heavy, so I always gotta kind of keep an eye on it. My other one is a better shot glass. It's got a little wider of a base, but we'll get through this. Color in the filter on Darren's cigarette. Oh, this is interesting. Here I drew where he had some sort of tattoo on his chest, but he doesn't anywhere else. He just has the chest hair, so we're just going to ignore that. This is why I keep the references around because even though I think I did the blue underdrawings over the course of a week or two, um, definitely some of them don't line up. Now, what I'm gonna do here, I started drawing a speech bubble, but kind of the style throughout the book is if a character's talking, they're the only one in the frame, then no speech bubble. If it's something like down here where Ricky's the only one in the frame, but that's actually narration. The first few pages I wasn't blocking off the narrative, but I will put a line around that so it kind of boxes that out. Here, though, I'm kind of debating because he's saying crap, but I think it kind of sometimes it benefits where you have, um, basically, what was it? One of my professors at UBC used to say, "Consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." I know that wasn't his quote. He was quoting some famous author, but that is kind of what we're going to have in this book is a lot of inconsistencies stylistically. I can always go and add speech bubbles in down the road if I really want to. Uh, that is a big thumb Darren has. I'm going to say fix thumb. So that's kind of a little bit too much. Now these guys, they are rat dudes, so they do have claws, just like they've got whiskers, um, and tails, although Darren's tail, we don't really see too much here. I kind of figure these guys would use their tails a little bit expressively, perhaps, so Darren's pissed off, so his tail is, kind of drooping. So this is the arm that Darren has the flaming dice on. I'm not worried about having the tattoos exactly match in the position and whatnot, but I think they should at least match idea-wise, you know what I mean? And then on his bicep, he's got, because he's a hot rod guy, we're gonna have some flames coming out there, and always monitoring that pen. Sometimes I've had where it's decided to drop a big ink spot in the middle of things, and that's kind of annoying. So we're gonna have that. And like a little that almost looks more like a go-kart, but little flaming car on his forearm here. And I will do the borders between the panels afterwards. And then I may also have to fix Darren's hand and shift it because usually they're quite thick lines. Whereas here, because Ricky's there and then also Darren's there, we are gonna have the speech bubbles. Although I usually use a thicker pen, so I'm gonna do the drawing and then when I do the borders between the frames, then that is when I will worry about, um, that's when I'm going to worry about having the different speech bubbles and whatnot. I'm actually gonna turn this to the side because sometimes, with the hair, you want it to kind of flick off at the top, but pushing up is kind of working against the grain of the way the pen wants to work and whatnot. This would be a good spot to probably turn the paper upside down, but you can also do it just that way, sideways. Kind of gets the vibe without all the scratchiness, except when I'm going that way, but and Ricky does have a ever so slight widow's peak. I may Photoshop out the gap between the teeth because then that makes him look a little bit strange. Fix teeth. This is what it is. Sometimes you kind of do things as you're inking, go, yeah, we don't want that. But that's why we have Mr. Photoshop, right? Some guys will, of course, use whiteout or something and then draw over the whiteout after it dries. I mean, there's definitely um, value to doing it that way. It's just kind of not my style because everything's I know is going to be going through Photoshop anyways because I got to assemble the pages and whatnots and then slap them into InDesign, et cetera, et cetera. So I figure I will just do my fixes that way rather than, um, especially because this is liquid ink. I mean, often when I've seen, well, for example, I know I've seen Ethan Van Sciver, yeah, EVS. I've seen on some of his drawing streams where he's done it, but he I think inks with pens like marker, fine liner type of thing rather than a dip pen. So therefore, his stuff is dry pretty much instantly. Whereas this, like, I'd have to if I was going to use a whiteout to fix something like that. First of all, that's such a tiny area; it would probably make it worse. But also, I would have to wait till the whole thing was dry, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I do it that way. And the underdrawing, this was done at a time when I was still kind of envisioning Ricky as kind of being a furry chested little dude. You know, after all, he's a rat, so rats are hairy. But later I thought, he's also a young dude. And I don't know, it just seemed more correct in looking at drawings of him to have him be bare chested. You know, he'll get fuzzy as he gets older, I guess. Plus, I already have like Noah from Noah's Archipelago. Um, Always is going around bare chested and has a hairy chest and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, I kind of want to have some separation between the characters. Yeah, Ricky's hand is going to get cut off here because, well, basically because I screwed up in the underdrawing. But it is what it is. We do want Ricky's tail kind of going off to the side there. This is pretty much going to vanish anyways in the line. So now we are already, 15 minutes in and we're finished a couple panels. We just need to, first I'm going to outline those speech bubbles with a medium-sized nib, and then we will put in the panel boundaries. It's funny, those always look like such super, extremely overly wide um, borders on the speech bubbles until I do what I do with my panel boundaries. And this is because I'm going to actually flip it the other way because this is dry mostly and that one's not. But some comic artists, they will basically draw a thin black line and then they'll have a white gutter in between the panels. I don't do that. I like these really fat black lines. And I remember at some point I was thinking, oh, that was something I did with Noah's Archipelago, um, my webcomic. And yes, it was, but looking at some of my original webcomic, Zuma the Destroyer from like 2006, it started with very thin panel boundary lines like that. Like I wouldn't have any gutters, just the outline. And then they ended up becoming almost like this. So it's actually something that's been part of my style for 20 odd years. And then for this book, what we're having is the margins will be completely black, um, and about half an inch thick at, around the outside of the page. So then that's going to make these read um, just as really big gutters, as if I had done, the thin black outline and the white gap on a white page. So there is that. Well, I'll draw this one first. I will box off this narration, but I'm going to do it after I draw this because otherwise I'm going to smudge that, which is pretty much guaranteed to happen because I'm a little bit sloppy. So back to the smaller pen. I've got, oops, got some adapters up there that are in the way. So now I can shove those and move that. Oops. That does happen. That's basically where I got too much of a gob of ink on the underside of the pen. Now, when I'm wiping off my pen, I have paper towels off to the side, and we can do just you don't really touch you don't touch the paper so much, but you just fold it into a sharp corner and kind of dip this in the little puddle of ink, and it will pull it up by capillary action. You still have a bit of a smudge, but because that is the edge of the garage door at Darren's Custom Cars, I'm about to just go and pull up my reference, meaning my previous pages from when Ricky showed up there. Actually, okay, never mind. I've got like 3 books of, Bristol boards for this, graphic novel, so I'm just trying to find the correct book, portfolio book. So the books in like these. So I just need to look. Yeah. So as you can see, we've got a thicker outline in shadow around the garage door, so that's not going to be a problem at all. Let me just rinse that pen and start again. But that is one of the reasons. If you ever see me start to draw and then lift up, I'm not necessarily getting more ink. Sometimes I'm wiping ink off on the edge of, see there, I smudged it on the edge of the shot glass. But even that is not a problem because it's supposed to be a stucco wall around um, the garage. So just I'm gonna put this down so I don't accidentally transfer that ink anywhere else. But we're just going to fatten up that line and no problem. Now you can't always do that. Sometimes you get an ink splotch and there's just you're gonna be photoshopping, and that's just the way it is. But to the extent where you can kind of like see right there, you can see some wanting to come out of the reservoir on the underside of the bowl here on this nib. So we're gonna do that. I'm trying to see where is okay. So the ground is about where his tail comes up, or where the roof of his car comes up. So that little bit of smudge is fine because it's just gonna make it look a little grimy, which frankly, this place is a little grimy, so, that all works. Now here is that edge. Gonna put a little more pressure to get, like, the slats of the garage door, and then less pressure to get, like, the fake wood grain. After all, very virtually well, I don't wanna say no garage doors are actually made of wood, but it's pretty rare these days. Mostly they are metal that is embossed to look like wood grain. And I'm making sure that the intercom matches, so there's this little, like, speaker thing and then the button. And then there is a sign for Dare where it says Darren's Custom Cars, but we basically start right here where the, where that border is gonna go, so we're just gonna ignore it. And I need to be very careful in how I draw things here. Ricky's car, by the way, is a 1983 Volkswagen Rabbit, which in Canada they were called the Rabbit. I think everywhere else it was either just the Golf or the GTI. It's the exact same little car. Um, and it is a rust bucket, but Ricky loves it none all the same. And Darren is the one who keeps the damn thing running. So I'm gonna admit that this is not the most accurate drawing of a Volkswagen Rabbit. I actually have, because I was thinking like for actually a series of paintings I wanted to do. Um, featuring Ricky doing like a car getaway, uh, running from the cops in this car. Um, Actually, with Darren in tow. Forgot about that. I have not gotten around to doing that painting series, but because that is kind of because I'm going to because Ricky's the only one in here, I'm gonna skip the speech bubble and I'm just gonna fill in like that. Excuse me. Probably be 2 more sneezes momentarily because they always seem to come in threes. Hi, Derek. How's it going? Oh, yeah. So, North Carolina. God, I'm gonna forget. Uh, oh, you're not talking. Are you talking the Stanley Cup or no? You're talking like more local championships. I, I should know who's in the Stanley Cup Finals. I saw it, but I think it was the Carolina Hurricanes, right? That's the one you're talking about. You'd think that a Canadian such as myself would pay more attention to hockey, but I sort of do and I sort of don't. But yeah, it would totally be cool if the Hurricanes did win. Um, Again, I'm trying to remember if I'm getting the information right about who's in the finals. Um, it's- oh, oh yeah, I love that. I was leaving doing Batman drawings like that. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, where I was starting to say is because drawing cars is not my forte. I do have reference photos from like the local car club, um, doing show and shines and stuff like that. But what I did because I don't have any of my own reference photos for a Volkswagen Rabbit, is I actually managed to find like a model kit of the Golf GTI of roughly the right vintage. So now I got to build that because then I'll at least have like the model car. And it's about yay big. Um, to then draw different angles of Ricky's car. It's with the best of intentions, and I've had that model kit unopened for like a year, possibly a year and a half. So we're gonna draw Ricky in here, and then I can sort of color in um, or shade in the background through the window around his head. But Ricky's obviously pissed that Darren is not going to help him. And since this is the first of the Ricky graphic novels, I'm not too concerned about getting the car really accurate at this point because it's not like it's been mentioned, oh, it's supposed to be this model. It's just, a random car at this point. But I know in future Ricky stories, the particularities of the car will matter more. This angle is also kind of a bit of a weird one because, it's that thing where he's leaning over sideways, he's stepping in, and he's got to duck his head, especially because he's not super tall. As he always says, he's just regular height for the rat people, but he's 5'11", and he's obviously got the big, tall, round ears and the spiky hair, so he's ducking down to get into the car. That's always kind of an awkward sort of a thing to draw. There's his tail kind of dragging behind him. And then he's got that leg, which isn't yet in the car, and that sneaker. Now, I'm going to kind of color into about here because that's where I'm going to put a fat outline, same weight as the speech bubble to set off the narration. I will also use the fatter nib to really black out underneath Ricky's car to give that shadow. So So I can put Darren away for, I don't know, about 10 pages or so. So I'll put those off to the side. I will do a couple passes to kind of fatten this up. Now, I'm still kind of debating. Obviously, I'm not going to do it now, but there is certainly a possibility that when all is said and done, I will decide that I will go and put speech bubbles in everywhere where somebody's talking, even though I often don't, where it's just the one person in there, especially somewhere like here, because there's the narration and there's the speech bubble, and part of me feels like it needs the speech bubble, but we're not going to do that today. That would be something for in Photoshop, in which case I would also do Darren's that way. But it's a note to myself that for the next the next graphic novel project, that's the decision I will make from the get go and plan right from the blue underdrawing stage. Because you do kind of draw a little differently if you have to draw around a speech bubble or whatever, versus where it's like, just sort of fit in the words. So, I mean, hey, this is my first graphic novel, even though I've been doing comics off and on for 20 years, longer than that in terms of just like random doodles and stuff. But in terms of projects that I was posting online, the first was Zombie the Destroyer in 2006. So, but that you're still always learning, and a graphic novel is kind of different you know um, from something like a web comic or single panel comic, et cetera, et cetera. So here we're going to have Ricky doing some dumpster diving. Uh, actually, last time I was at recycling, the um, the giant bin that's like the size of a shipping container, um, um, that the cardboard goes in. I kind of noticed like, oh, there's actually some really interesting like rust patterning on because the lid was open and whatnot. So actually, after throwing my um, cardboard and stuff into there, I got back in my car. I kind of whipped out my phone and like took a couple photos. Um, so that's the sort of thing that might turn up in paintings involving Ricky. You know, I don't know why Ricky thought he was going to find submarine parts in like the dumpsters of local businesses, but I guess hey, you never know unless you try, right? Before I go further, I'm going to draw Ricky's head in so that we kind of have a bottom boundary, I guess. Plus, I guess, part of the fun is Ricky being a rat, you know, even though he walks on his hind legs and he wears clothing and all this sort of stuff, still kinda want him to have some certain, like, rat-like behavior or stereotypical rat behaviors, including hanging around garbage dumps. Oh, question would be, does Ricky even know what would constitute a good submarine part? Probably not. So earlier this afternoon, I filmed my weekly recap video, which I post on my secondary channel, Pura Dracula of Art Vlogs. Be linked somewhere from my channel page, homepage. Um, but anyways, I was talking about what happened on my Tuesday stream when I was working on Noah's Archipelago and like a marker drawing. Everything was going fine. And I had some people in the chat, a couple of my regulars were in and we were talking, and then just suddenly, um, because I stream on my phone when I do these vertical streams, and then but I watch the chat and monitor um, the stream on my laptop, so I can look, glance up, see if anybody's posted anything in the chat, make sure that I'm like right now I am in frame. This is a little bit out of frame, but I'm done drawing that part. But anyways, so I can shift, keep an eye on things that way. Anyways, about I thought 45 minutes in, but maybe it was a little sooner than that. I look and my laptop had frozen up and nobody was posting new stuff in the chat. Fine. And I can just barely see um the screen on my phone to monitor the stream, but it looked like everything was going fine except I had nobody watching. I'm like, oh well, that's fine. People are in and out. Other stuff going on, whatever. Um But so I just figured it was a slow night and whatnot. And then I kept going, still like 0 people watching. I'm like, "Oh, well, whatever." I'm working on my art. And then out of the blue, at about 8 o'clock my time, so an hour and a half in, suddenly, because I tried to refresh, the stream on my laptop and it wouldn't refresh, suddenly I look and it's gone from, like, the spinning wheel of death trying to refresh on my laptop to the end screen where it was showing, like, recommended videos. I'm like, "Oh," and I look at my phone, and suddenly on my phone, it's showing, like, when you finish a stream, it shows you a screen that, tells you how many people were watching and all that. I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. I didn't end the stream." But I wasn't finished the drawing, so I quickly started another stream. Of course, I forgot to make it public. So I was like, "How come no one's watching?" Well, because it was unlisted or whatever. But anyways, I finished the drawing and I've got the 2 streams, right? So then I look at it, and I realize that YouTube ate, like, an hour out of the first stream, like, the last hour of it wasn't there. So there's only, like, a half hour, which is whatever, I let it process overnight, and then like any other stream, I made it public again the next afternoon. But anyways, it's one of those things where I've heard on Reddit a few other people talking about maybe having similar issues with streaming from mobile. So I was kind of thinking I've been meaning to go over to like a horizontal live streaming format, um, and do so. using OBS. I do that already on Wednesday nights with my Zombie the Destroyer streams. I started that a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whatever. So, anywho, that kind of had me thinking that eventually I'll probably move all my streams that way. I mean, obviously, it can still glitch out, but the nice thing with OBS is you do have like it'll tell you what's going on with your stream or whatnot. And sometimes you can refresh from OBS in the same stream without like losing it. Anyway, so for the near future, this is gonna look a little weird other than I guess he's jumping forward as well. Um, for the near future, I'm going to still be doing the Ricky streams on my phone to have a vertical stream, so everything will remain the same. But down the road, eventually, this will, all my streams will be horizontal and done through my laptop. So just throwing that out there for future reference. If at some point it's suddenly horizontal, it's like, what? The format's changed. This is different. Well, that would be one of the reasons why. Um, Plus, then when I do go via OBS and whatnot, I can do things like throw in, like a technical difficulties, a little video that I made or um, intro, outro, anyways, there's some different options that I have doing it that way. Um, so, but what that's going to start with would just be in July, I'll start doing the Monday and Tuesday streams horizontally. Um, and already I'm doing the Wednesday one that way, so it's not going to affect this particular like the Friday streams for a while. Probably maybe not even until after I finish working on this book, Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat, because then kind of all the streams for this book are, you know, compatible. Um, because I mean, this is page 33 of the book. I think it's another 35 or 40 pages that I'm going to stream working on. And then, like, the last third of this book, I'm going to do off stream so as to avoid giving away spoilers. Um, so, but then I'll be working on like the next Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat graphic novel. So when I do that one, I will probably just kind of switch to the new format. So there we go. That's kind of a crude joke, where Ricky says crap, and then there actually is some. But it's kind of funny too. So let me just think maybe here we've got kind of like a brick wall or something like that. I kind of shade it in so it's dark. So there we have that page. Now we are going on to, I guess you could say, the title fight, you know, the title match or whatever. And that is Ricky's boss, Big Mike, versus Ricky's boss's wife, Mrs. Mike. Her actual name is Brandy, but we rarely call her Brandy. So this is where it is. So we last saw these two in the other book. Let me just pull that up. Um, when last we saw these two, the reason why Ricky's had time to make his submarine plans is because Big Mike, who owns the recording studio Ricky works in, was dragged to Paris by Mrs. Mike for their anniversary. Isn't this romantic? And she's sticking her hand over Big Mike's face so, that her Eiffel Tower selfie won't be ruined by her husband, who's paying for all this. Um, I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but anyways, so here we're having the next part of that little part of the story as I'm like cleaning some dried ink out of my pen like this. And what's going on with these two? And so there's per I get actually I don't know. That might be a different day in front of the Eiffel Tower. I think that's a different Hawaiian shirt. This is a sailboat Hawaiian shirt. Anywho, we're gonna first draw the tower, and it's not gonna look anything like the actual Eiffel Tower. I'm like gonna purposefully make it not look proper because, you know, I have not been to Paris. I mean, I've seen this thing in photos, but I don't have my own reference photos. I'm also not patient. So we're gonna try and just kind of like make it clearly where you get the idea. It's like, oh, I think she's going for the Eiffel Tower, but we don't want it to fall in the uncanny valley where it's like clearly not, but almost. So we'll just go for clearly not the correct Eiffel Tower instead. This version of the Eiffel Tower definitely looks like it's got too many holes in it, and that's going to fall down. This case, I'm not going to worry about trying to put in the Paris skyline, which I did kind of fudge in the previous one, or the previous iteration. So this is a case, you can see that line. Most of the book, as I said, are most of the book's going to have a half-inch black border all the way around the page, and that border will be a full bleed. And the reason for that is that way I don't have to worry about getting too close to the edges with my text or important bits of the drawing or whatever. But um, there's a few pages like this one where they're actually not going to have that black border. It actually changes the aspect ratio ever so slightly. So these pages where they are full bleed illustrations, you get this sort of thing where I drew in a line to make sure that I stay that far away because it's going to crop it right about here. And then that's far enough in to be safe, even when I reduce it, because this is somewhat bigger than the actual page size. So it's all that stuff that you got to figure out first, ideally. Like I am starting a new coloring book project that I'm hoping to have out in the fall, and that actually probably I can just barely make it, but I gotta really get going on it this weekend. But one of the first things I had to do was figure out, okay, like what size are the pages gonna be, and what's the layout of the pages gonna be, because that affects how I will be drawing the thing. So just going to, for these, we're going to kind of be a little bit more loosey-goosey in the back. This kind of looks like basket weaving in a weird way. We are just at this point, we are just going for random lines. This is definitely not, well, it's the rat world version of the Eiffel Tower. It's not as elegant as the real Eiffel Tower, right? So that's my excuse. I'm gonna leave a lot of white space in here, so rather than try and have the detailed landscape that they're in, we're just gonna have that, boom, they're in Paris, and then these little, vignettes. So, the next one is going to be, um, I wanna look at, where's my other drawing of Brandy? Actually, I guess I didn't pull it out. Doesn't matter. So, kinda have to be careful that I don't just draw every blonde rat chick the same. After all, there's, Ricky's girlfriend as well, though Brandy does not look like a baby, even though there's some superficial similarities. what giant ears you have, Brandy. I think I'm gonna make Brandy's dress black because that just makes my life a lot easier. I will probably go over this with the outline with a thicker black pen, but thicker black nib, I mean. I think this nib is probably getting a little clogged up. One thing I'm looking forward to is I did find out which exact model of nib this is, and I've ordered a dozen of them. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, it's probably just as well to order a dozen. So sometime this month I should have a whole bunch. And then I can just kind of swap out and soak one and then swap to the next one. Just got to remember that Big Mike always has stains on his tank tops because he's a messy eater. And, he's a big time record producer. So I think his attitude is he doesn't have to look presentable because there's always going to be chicks trying to break into the industry who don't care what he looks like. Break into the industry or, get him to introduce them to famous friends of his. So, again, we don't see Brandy's tail here because it's presumably drooping down this way and covered up by this little vignette. Gonna let that nib soak for a little bit. See what I can do with a fatter nib. Yeah, at least for a minute or two. Sometimes it doesn't take long, but it just that little bit of water kind of dissolves some stuff. Dissolves a little bit of crud. So we're going to put an outline around this. So, anyways, it's not baby. Brandy, Mrs. Mike, is Grabbing Big Mike's phone out of his pocket. I do try to vary, as you can just see, my line um, style when somebody's pissed off. After all, if you can add extra expressiveness to the drawing, I think that's always a good idea to do so. Sometimes it makes things look a little strange, but Mrs. Mike here is enraged, so her face is going to be a little bit contorted. Uh, Sometimes it's a little bit too much. Like, we're even going to make her boobs look angular here. Obviously, this time we didn't quite have that vibe going, but we will. I'm going to fill in that with the fatter nib in a moment. I kind of like to kind of shatter the letters when somebody's freaking out like this, right? As opposed to write them nicely, but just really big or really bold. Like, let's have Brandy be completely unhinged. Now, what we're not seeing is we're actually reading left to right. So there is a cartoon, there is something that happens on the next page right up here, where she actually sees the text messages. But, you know, it's just easier to do one page at a time for the actual inking. And then for her speech bubble, we are also going to make it very jagged and, yeah, she's freaking out. So, one trick that's kind of fun to do. Actually, and those are going to be lighter, and because I'm scanning black and white, they may disappear. I may have to muck with something digitally, but gives a bit of a sense of Brandy is losing it. And I just colored in her dress, and we're going to do the same thing. So that kind of gives a sense of the chaos. I still need to finish off Big Mike over here. Well, Brandy wants to finish him off in a different way. Oh, how well. I guess that doesn't show when I lift it up because I'm bringing it out of the camera view. So that is the first half of our Brandy losing her shit spread. Um, so now, because this is reading left to right, so we have the Eiffel Tower, and then Brandy reaches in and grabs Big Mike's phone out of his back pocket. But before she can, turn all raticidal, we got to have her actually reading the texts. So that's going to be this one over here. So we've got about half an hour left in the stream. I think we will get through this just fine. Maybe a few minutes over, we'll see. So and here I want it kind of in between her regular hair and her gonna kill Big Mike uh expressive hair. So we're gonna have some lines that are still kind of like that and some that are like that. Before I can finish off drawing her, I gotta at least draw this part of Big Mike. that pen soak for a minute, or we will outline the two speech bubbles. Flip this upside down so I can do the speech bubble without smearing all my goobered up wet ink. Modeling this after a hard shell suitcase that I have that has kind of this ridge direct decoration kind of thing. Actually, I think the suitcase should be cut off right at that point. And I'm going to put the arrow in because I can Photoshop that out anyways, because I obviously have to fix, because she's got her hand wrapped around like this on, the pull-out part of the rolling suitcase. Therefore, I want the suitcase to end right there. Um, so now I gotta think, okay, this arm has the two bangles, or the fat bangles, and the other arm has like the random bangles. Luna. How's it going? We're drawing Ricky's boss, Big Mike, about, well, he doesn't actually get murdered by his wife, but she's highly tempted after she finds out he's cheating. So, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. So, making some pretty good headway on this piece. This is our third page tonight. Looks like she's his sugar baby. Well, see, the problem is she's his wife and he has a sugar baby aside from that. But she probably started out as his sugar baby. Yeah. Big Mike does seem like the sort of dude who would have had one lined up well married to a previous one. I'm trying to remember now from because I've written a bunch of short stories narrated by Ricky, and I think she is her name's Brandy. I think Brandy is Big Mike's third wife? Yeah, I wanna say third wife. So, yeah, probably, she was the this bish, um, at the end of the second marriage, but, certain women always think it's gonna be different, that the guy's not gonna cheat on them even though they were the one he was cheating with on the last wife. I'm just going to grab the fatter pen and fill in her dress, which is black. People wear it like that. Oh, totally. It's gonna be different this time. He really loves me. I knew. I'm not gonna name names, but once upon a time when I worked in the entertainment industry or on the fringes of it, let's be honest, I was never on the big time. But I knew somebody very much like Big Mike. And that somebody had at one point I tallied, he had 8 women strung along that weren't aside from the missus. So and then what would happen was each one of them, when they got sick of his crap, they either left the industry entirely or the ones who had connections and talents, they would go work for, companies that he hated and wouldn't do business with. So and some of them would even, like, pretend to remain friends, but then just be too busy all the time to ever to, hang around that, him and his crew after that. And then you'd hear the rumors, months or a couple years later of about exactly what happened. And the thing is, the girl oh, exactly, they never do, you know? Um And the way they get away with it, at least in the entertainment industry, music business, and I assume film business as well, is that there's always a parade of new girls coming in who don't know the lore, who don't know, oh, that he has this pattern or whatever, or who are, you know, if they're transactional enough, they don't care. They're just going to do what it takes to get ahead. Um, and, if it involves, the casting coach or whatever, they're perfectly willing to do that until they get a leg up and then, basically until they get someone who's more powerful that they can ditch him for. And then other girls who, that kind of who either didn't have that kind of personality, to just be as vindictive as they could, or who actually bought the "he really loves me" thing. Often they would just, you know, escape that business and leave, because it's funny, the guy who I'm talking about, the stringing 7 or 8 women along guy, in retrospect, I remember when I was first, uh, on the periphery of his scene, mentioning to a friend of mine from university who is in the business, but she worked in a different genre. But I just mentioned his name, and she didn't say anything. She just sighed and then repeated his name. Like, well, I'm not gonna say it, but so and so, so and so. Anyways, and then she changed the subject, which in retrospect, it should have been like the massive red flag. And then, and this is also a guy who actually some of the girls didn't even know he was married because he pretended he was divorced and he wouldn't wear his ring. And it's like, oh, it was I'm not gonna say everything in, Ricky B. Rat that involves this, scuzzy boss, Big Mike, was based on this individual, but, certain things. You know, Big Mike is kind of an amalgam of numerous individuals, not all that I actually knew, but, some I knew, some I heard about, and the odd thing that I just made up for, to make it funny. But, like, none of the guys I knew of, the wife, beat them over the head with a suitcase, but, many of them, their wives should have. So he sounds gross. He is. You know? But, he's, some people, if you're new and you don't know the background, um, there was one dude, one of my mentors, who did look out for me, but unfortunately, said mentor didn't know what was going on until, quite late in the game. So, it's kind of a funny story. And I'm pretty sure the people who are witnesses to this incident, presumably this many years later, don't know that I live streamed, don't remember who I am probably. But anyways, so my mentor, I had found out um, that Mr. Disgusting was actually still married the night before this project. So, and I was just like, like, I'm done with this guy, but I had to deal with him in, other in a business setting. Um, so whatever. I was like, we're done, whatever. And I was furious and all this stuff. Anyways, the mentor um found an excuse to pop by on this session on this project, right? And what he did was in front of Mr. Gross, he made the mention, how's Mr. Gross's wife's name? First name. And just the look on Mr. Gross's face, and he's like, because of course, the mentor had known this asshole for a long time, right? So he couldn't, like, pretend like, "I have no idea what you're talking about," right? Anyways, and then my mentor made the comment, he's like, "Yeah, I saw those pictures," Mrs. Gross, posted on Facebook, which was his way of saying, like, I know I'm friends with your wife on Facebook, and I'm, kind of putting out the warning to Mr. Gross to stop that crap. And I was standing behind Mr. Gross, and I was just watching him like twist in the wind and enjoying it so much. I'm sure my mentor was kind of like, why is she kind of smirking? And I'm thinking, like, oh, like I was just enjoying watching, like, this SOB is finally getting a bit of his comeuppance. Um, but anyways, whereas other individuals in that world were trying to push me towards working with Mr. Gross. I was like, "Oh, okay, I see how this goes." I mean, it's, a lot more than a decade ago, almost, oh god, coming up on 20 years ago now, so whatever, it's water under the bridge. And, Mr. Gross was good at what he did work-wise, so he'll probably always kinda land on his feet, but, he's also somebody who burned a lot of bridges over the years. So, I wouldn't say Mr. Gross had a happy ending. Well, I mean, not in ter no, no, after that, I did not work with him again, I was like, I had certain commitments for the next year where I had to, but then I just kind of quietly backed away, you know? And actually, I think it was 2 years after that, I kind of had this vow where it's like, I am never working with this SOB ever again. I don't even want to see him. Like, I blocked him on social media, all this sort of stuff. And I think the last communication I had with him, if memory serves, was actually right after I had sort of been like, I'm never talking to him again. I don't care. I'll, I'll get a real job or I'll do, whatever. Where I was just like, this is over. And then it was like actually a social media right before I blocked him thing where it was actually not about me, but it was about a friend of mine and the friend of mine's project. And Mr. Gross had responded to me about something and all this, where I was like, yeah, I mean, I wasn't really working with my friend, but I was just like, for my friend's sake, I didn't tell him to F off. I was just like, oh yeah, they're awesome, blah, blah, blah. And then quietly hoped I wouldn't, have to run into him on any projects with this friend, and then the project fell apart, you know? And then my friend started a different project, which was not a commercial project, so nothing that, Mr. Gross would have, been able to profit from, so then that ended up fine, you know? Um, and yeah. But I remember just going like, "Ah, I hope I don't see this guy around my friend's thing and all this," but then it kind of got saved because, yeah, the project, fell apart without my intervention or anything like that. But, yeah, I mean, Mr. Gross is, as far as I know, he's still kicking. Um, Mrs. Gross eventually divorced him. I found out about that about 6 or 7 years later, and I don't know the whole story, but I get the impression that it may have been something where I don't know if there was like, we're gonna stay together for the kid, and that once, the kid is grown up and moves out, then, whether they had an agreement like that. I kinda got the sense that that wasn't actually like, it wasn't like an open marriage or anything like that. I 'cause I the little snippet of rumor I heard, it kinda sounded like she found out something like this, and, at that point, the kid was out on their own, so then it was like, "Okay, well, I'm done with this asshole," and, she divorced him. So and by the time that happened, I wasn't even in terms of, like, mutual associates or whatnot, I was kind of out of so far out of the loop, but it was just something that I kind of caught a snippet of on, social media years later, and it's like, well, good for her that she finally left. I don't know why she didn't do it sooner, but my guess had been that it was kind of, when the kid went off to university and, did that on the other side of the country, that it was just like, time to kick him out. But one of those things, I'll never hear the full story. It's really none of my business, but, I was kind of, nosy about that. So every so often, if I'd see something along those lines, I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, good for her. Good for Mrs. Gross." Bad that she put up with it for that long, but again, I don't know the situation in terms of what did she know about, what did she not know about, what were the financials, like, maybe she felt she had to stay until a certain amount of time, I don't know. Um, but yeah, it's gross all around for sure. So, anyways, so Mrs. Mike here, Brandy, is going thinking, "I'll make that prick pay one way or another." And as we can see, Dior rat, well, that would be the rat version of Dior, so she is running up the credit card for sure. and also she's in Paris, so she has access to. Yeah, poor Mrs. Gross. Yeah, well, and, yeah, it's definitely one of those things, and, I mean, I know there's certain situations where, say, if you marry somebody, this guy was not a rock star, so let me say this right off the bat, even though he occasionally liked to think he was, but he was not, like, on that level. But I do get, like, if I don't, I'm just gonna pull a name out of my butt, but someone like, Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, um, where that's kind of, you know, dudes in Motley Crue, he has a history, you can make some assumptions, and I don't know, maybe he's not like that, but, I have definitely heard rumors he was. Um, but if you marry a rock star who's a touring musician and, especially if he has a certain type of reputation, like there's a certain expectation that he may be poorly behaved. We'll just put it that way. But, otherwise, even in the entertainment industry, there's usually some sort of expectation the guy's going to take his vows seriously. Um, After all, if they're not going to, why even get married? I mean, if you just wanna, mess around, you can get plenty of that if you were in that business without, tying yourself down or whatever. Um, so yeah, it's a bad it was a bad situation all around. Um, and then there were certainly some other, like, some of the girls that he was running around with were then, like, trying to, like, be super catty to their perceived rivals and, like, ruin their careers to, you know, keep them away. Anyways, it got messed up, for sure. At this point, like I said, it's kinda water under the bridge, and it's just like, "Okay, if I need a new plot point for sleazy dude for somebody in, the Ricky B. Rat world, yeah, let me just, go look through my emails to my best friend from 2009. Oh, I forgot about this incident. Well, let's have Big Mike do that." You know? I was trying to think, how is her hands gonna be like, or no, you're not gonna see her thumb because of all the bags, that's right. Mrs. Mike here has so many bags, it doesn't even look like bags. Yeah. So I'm gonna leave these areas as white space and just kinda let Brandy's legs just kinda fade out, because they are supposed to be different little vignettes. So, there's Big Mike's tail. Let's have Big Mike. Well, he definitely has he's got a big butt. He's got a big gut too. And he's the socks with sandals kind of dude as well. Perhaps Brandy looked at Big Mike and thought, any man with fashion sense that bad can't possibly have any luck with, you know, screwing around. The Hawaiian shirts, the cargo shorts, the socks and sandals. And we'll see when I do the review of the last couple pages I did tonight. He also always wears like a white tank top that's got mustard or ketchup stains on it. So that's going to be that. Now let's, well, it's a little odd because we had a scene change after the first page. So I'll show page 2 and 3 now. That makes it worse, worse, of course. Um, so, well, that's kind of the full spread, but this is the first page. If I bring that up, then we get a little bit of go around. So Ricky's narrating here, which actually, now that I think of it, let me just, I wasn't going to put in like a narration box around that, but I really should. Which also means that I need to Photoshop out the top of the Eiffel Tower. But let's do that while I think of it. I was saying earlier, there's a little bit of inconsistency in this book about like narration boxes, speech bubbles, etc. So we're going to do that. So, and I'll just I'm going to make a little arrow so that I know for myself. I should see that, but just in case. So Ricky's voiceover type of thing is then Big Mike got back from Paris all pissy because his missus found some text messages or whatever and screamed at him the whole trip and ran up his credit card lots. So they're in front of the Eiffel Tower. Brandy reaches into Big Mike's pocket, grabs his phone. And, because we're kind of reading left to right. Then we've got Brandy saying, "Who dis bish?" And he's like, "Hey." And now she's going to bash his head with the suitcase. He's like, "Chill, baby." And then she's screaming, "I'll kill the tramp and you." And had some fun, like doing ink splatters and whatnot. And her hair is all like, yeah. But anyways, this is what I was saying. Like, you can see where he's got the stains on. Granted, let's be honest, Brandy's not exactly the domestic type who's washing his clothes. But or doing laundry and folding and cooking or cleaning, any of that sort of stuff. But even so, he always has stains on his tank top. um so then she's going, "I'll make that prick pay one way or another." Big Mike looks weird, to be honest, a weird man. Oh, he is. He's a slob. He's a big time record producer. And at some point, he just decided that he didn't have to care about what he looked like or whatnot. Um, not every record producer is going to be like that. I can think of a few that I used to work with. One always, you wouldn't actually know he was a record producer. You might think he was a label head like an accountant, VP finance or something for Warner Brothers or Universal Records is what he looked like because he was always like a business casual guy, like button down white shirt. Sometimes he'd wear jeans. Usually he'd wear like khakis or golf pants and whatnot. And this is a guy who, had tons of multi-platinum records going, well, at this point now, 50 years. I think he's still working. Um, he is still working. But when I knew him, be more like 35, but 35 years. But so he always looked business casual and dressed up in that sense. Another one I knew tended to be like jeans and a t-shirt was a very common thing. Uh, Another one guy I knew who was like one of the world's top mix engineers, always in like jeans and a golf polo shirt. But would get the odd one where they would dress maybe not exactly like this, but where they would just be like, "I don't care what I look like. I'm going to be comfortable, and people are not hiring me for what I look like, etc." So you'd get that sort of stuff. But you got Big Mike. He's wearing a Rolex, and then cargo shorts kind of almost makes the implication that Big Mike at some point might have been a drummer. It's kind of like the stereotypical thing that drummers all wear cargo pants. Not all of them, but like I would say 75% of the drummers I used to know would wear cargo pants just because you've got a bunch of stuff that you're carrying. Mind you, so do guitarists, but guitarists don't wear cargo pants usually. They wear tight jeans. But anyways, so Big Mike is kind of doing his I don't care what I look like kind of thing. So that's the Brandy and Big Mike saga. And what I don't think this book actually gets into it. If I'm not, I'd have to look through it. But off the top of my head, I don't think it's mentioned in Ricky B Goes to Sea. But like Big Mike owns the recording studio that Ricky works at. Ricky's what they call a gopher, so he goes and fetches beer and pizza and all that for the bands and the producers and whatnot. So therefore, they don't have to leave the recording studio. They just sit there for 12 hours and work, right? Um, but there's a guy who's a mix engineer who does like the balancing between the different instruments, who works at this studio called Jeff. Jeff is supposed we will meet Jeff in this book. We meet him in about 15 pages, I think. Actually, maybe less than that, maybe 10. So we'll meet him in July or August on the streams if I keep up with the 3 pages a night. But Jeff is supposed to also have gold records in his own right. And Jeff and Big Mike butt heads a lot. But the problem for Big Mike is Jeff is Brandy's nephew. So, like, not that Jeff is a super young guy and not that Brandy's super old, but it's like somebody's grandpa got married a couple times. So she's like from a later marriage type of thing. But, anyways, Big Mike can't do anything about Jeff because Mrs. Mike will flip out on him if he tried to fire her. So, anyways, there's a whole lot of lore about all of that. So that is that spread. But before we actually got to that spread, we finished off one that we started last week. So that's the page from the end of last week's stream. This is well, that's Ricky. That's Ricky's cousin Darren, who builds hot rods, and Ricky's building a submarine and all this stuff. Because if anybody's missed the beginning of it, Ricky had a vision and he thinks that God has spoken to him and told him to go forth into the sea and grab the big shiny rock from the shipwreck movie. So that would be, the big diamond necklace from Titanic. And then give that in order to impress his girlfriend. So Ricky's trying to build a submarine. Ricky does not know anything about subs. So he goes to his cousin Darren, who builds hot rods with these very poorly drawn submarine plans. Anyway, so that was last week's thing where we had it left on a cliffhanger. I can build anything. And then what we started with this week, where Darren says, but I won't, because your mom is crazy and she'll come after me. His cousin looks like a druggie. He does. He's like half rockabilly dude, half, redneck with a mullet. I kind of joked. It's like he couldn't decide between like a rockabilly pompadour and like a redneck hillbilly mullet, so he kind of did both. Strangely enough, though, Darren is kind of the voice of reason because he's not going to help Ricky to build a submarine when he knows that Ricky probably get his ass killed in a submarine in the middle of the sea. So Ricky is pissed off, and Ricky continues dumpster diving for submarine parts. I don't think Ricky has any clue what parts he would even put on a submarine, but he keeps looking through dumpsters trying to build this thing for free. And of course, we had this is a stupid little joke where there's a pile of dog crap, and Ricky says crap because he can't find anything in the dumpster. And I don't know, it just I had that vision in my head. It's like, that's so stupid. I have to put it in the book. So, anyways, that is where we were with those guys. I'll bring Raticidal Brandy back on. So, we're next week we are going to continue on, of course, but let me just find, I'm going to try and see what it is. I think what we continue on next week is, well, first, of course, because Brandy went shopping and ran up Mike's credit card, first we have an ad related to that, which is part of our B story about intrusive ads eavesdropping on the story. And then it's going to be Big Mike is back in the recording studio, and he's being an ass and whatnot. So we hear a little bit more. I think next week we're just going to have a little bit more seeing some of the back rooms of the recording studio, and Ricky starts to explain about them. And then we're going to kind of, well, get into Ricky trying to build the submarine the week after, I think. So that's kind of where we is with Ricky B Goes to Sea. So, what I'm going to do with the stream for anyone who's just maybe just tuning in now is it is going to be saved as private overnight so that YouTube can process all the video quality up to blah 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 blah. Actually, I just realized I haven't made last night's stream public yet. I'll have to do that as soon as I go off air. But usually in the afternoon, and then once it's done processing, I make the stream public the next afternoon. And then next week, we are going to have a full slate. I missed the Wednesday stream this week because I had to be somewhere on Wednesday night. But next week, Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, working on a different project every night. So Ricky's going to be next Friday night. Tuesday and Thursday are a couple different Noah's Archipelago projects. Wednesday is Alma the Destroyer, and Monday is Miles Marov, our little half mouse, half rat buddy, who is actually Miles isn't mentioned in this book because the story was written before I really had Miles as a character. But Miles is actually Ricky's girlfriend's cousin, so he does relate to the Ricky B. Rat world. Um, and anything else I want to say? I filmed this afternoon. I filmed the weekly recap video that I post on my Pura Draculea Art Vlogs channel. And that I need to actually edit it tonight and tomorrow morning. It'll be live either tomorrow night on Saturday or on Sunday morning. It'll be in the other channel. I usually make a post about that on my main channel. And I will be filming on the weekend. It probably won't get posted until like Monday or Tuesday at the rate I'm going. But there is going to be a sketchbook tour video coming up pretty soon. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you for watching. If you've made it all this way to the end, thank you for your patience. And we will see you for more drawings. Of course, if you're new to the channel, subscribe for more of this and hit like, the usual, all the YouTube things. We all know the drill, right? And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you soon. Bye for now, and have a great weekend, Luna. Thanks for coming in and popping into the chat. Take care, everyone. Bye.